Doodlebud here. Today we're checking out a pretty cool pen. It has a unique filling system in there, and this was lent to me by a very gracious member of the Vancouver Pen Club. This is made by Conid. This is their Bulkfiller pen that's there in Antwerp, Belgium. And this particular model is the Minimalist. And while there are many interesting parts of this pen, it's the filling system that does it for this one. And having interesting filling systems is part of the fun with fountain pens. Here's an old vintage Schaefer. This is the PFM version 5. And with this one, if we can get it on camera here, you can watch the restoration if you want. I turn the knob on the back here, and out comes this snorkel filler. And you'll pull this back, depress it, and you can just put the end into your ink and it sucks up ink that way. That's super neat. What Conid did with their bulk filler is they essentially combined two filling systems. Here I got both Twisbies because they're nice and clear. The benefit of a demonstrator pen is also for YouTube videos. So here we have a piston filler. So you turn the knob, you drive a piston up and down. And if you haven't seen one before, this is called a vac filler. So you have a rod, then you have a plunger, there's a seal on here, you push this down, you're forcing all the air out, there's negative pressure here, there's a break line, so the seal essentially is no longer sealing, and then ink rushes up to the pen. The bulk filler system that they have has this very interesting little clasp, I'll show you this in a little bit, that connects a rod like on a vac filler, but also with a piston like on a piston filler. We'll get to that in a minute, it's inked up. So we'll write with it first, then I'll show you that in workings. But what I'll do first is I'll go through some of the parts and features. There are a few little things on here that I'm kind of surprised are present on the pen. I'll talk about those, some nitpicks, but also a bit of a design one that I'm quite surprised of. But first, I'll go through the basics. Immediately when I first saw the pen, it reminded me a little bit of a Lamy 2000. I do love the looks of the Lamy 2000. Similar type of clip, that type of design. The Lamy does have a spring clip. This is essentially just a machined one, so it's got some springiness into the metal. I do like the springiness of this one. A lot of times clips like this can be too stiff and they're not very functional. There is a nice balance to this one, but I'll just get into it now. So the clip looks nice. It fits with the style of the pen. They call it the Minimalist. But on here, these edges, focus. There we go there. They are very, very crisp. Like I would say they're sharp. And let me show you just how sharp it is. Let's go to a scrap page. I'll push this corner down and I'll put a little bit of force, but nothing crazy. And I'll drag it along. And if you don't worry, I didn't damage your pen to the owner who's watching this. You can cut through the page. That's too sharp. So yeah, shocked a little bit that these edges don't have a little more rounding to them. Perhaps because it's a minimalist design and everything is sort of square and blocky, but they don't need to be sharp. I did check the other models and there is some nice sort of chamfers that go along here. A nice little profile, it's smoothed out, but for this one, they keep it pointy. The end finial, I really do like how they did this. So this it's kind of like a yin and yang, but it's the filling system. So this is essentially their latch little filling system they have, how it all hooks in together. I think that is actually quite brilliant, how they put that into the pen. I don't know if all their pens have that. I think that's like their logo there. But how they put it on here, especially with the white and black, I think how this is done is they essentially have a blank, well, not a blank, but they'll have a piece with those two materials bonded together. There'll be a cutout, it'll get pressed in, and just, you can't see it on the camera here, but there's some machining marks. So I think a final pass is done just to smooth this out because there is no seam. You can't see it and you can't feel it. So excellent job on that. And it's clever and it looks nice. The cap is made of Delrin. It's a really nice plastic. It's actually kind of one of my favorite ones. I've had to make some parts out of Delrin before. I always enjoyed working with it. Dimensionally, it machines extremely well. It's just a solid plastic, and it's a great material. All sorts of great things with it. Some chemical resistance properties, all sorts of things. Nice and yeah, it's just a good material. Feels good in the hand. You can have it like matte. It takes a polish quite nicely. I loved using it if I had to make some type of fixture and there was a knob or something. It felt quite nice in the hand. So I do like the use of Delrin in it, going with the stainless parts and just the overall aesthetics of the pen with the clear demonstrator here. This is a slip cap. There is something I got to talk about in there as well that I'm quite surprised with. But there's the overall look of the pen in the hand. This one is equipped with the Conid titanium nib, so you can get a close-up of their logo. So you can see how that looks. I think it looks nice, and as it shows, it's a broad nib. I believe Conid is using Bach because that really looks like a Bach feed to me. We'll get more into the back end of the pen in a little bit here, but you have your knob that will actuate your piston rod. So we'll get into that in a minute. And there is a little set screw that's on here. You can check out, Conid has a channel, a YouTube channel where they show how to take this apart and service it. So I think that's great. I was really curious to make sure underneath the set screw that there is a flat spot or a detail that is machined into the rod to ensure the set screw doesn't leave a little burr on there. They do that. So I said, thank goodness, because if they didn't, I would lose my mind. But yeah, overall machining and design and everything's really good. You just got a slight little taper that goes down to the front of the pen that does cause an issue with the capping. And you know what? Let me just get into that right now. Here's to hoping the camera behaves with the focus. That first little bump that you see, that is an O-ring that goes all the way around to seal the pen. And then below that, where I'm pointing there with the nib, that is a step that will seal against the end of the pen, the end of the section. The issue is this. So the O-ring is going to go along here, but we have a bit of a profile, a bit of a wedge going on. So we have a wedge effect. So as you cap the pen, you're going to hit that O-ring, but as you push it in more, this diameter is increasing. So it's increasing the force on that little O-ring. And it's quite significant. Like it's really on there. What's going on also is there's a little breathing hole. So if you have a really good seal and you're pushing this, you have to let the air out. So let me show you how this works. I'll use this poppy as a prop here so we can demonstrate this. I'm going to insert the pin into that hole, and let me show you on the camera. So that breather hole is past the O-ring, but it's before that step where it seals at the end of the section. So you're going to insert the pen. The O-ring is going to go against the grip portion here, but it's going to get tighter and tighter because of the wedge effect. At the same time as it's producing the seal, the air pressure is going to get forced out through that little hole, which is a good thing. But you need to push it in all the way until this very end of the section hits that flat spot, because it needs to be past that hole, or else if you don't go deep enough, now the nib will dry out. So you have to go past that hole. It's going to seal against that flat inside the cap. But now you're really having to press hard because you're way up here on the section now. And the force to properly cap this, I find it's too much. To ensure it's fully seated, you go in. You kind of want to stop there. And even that's fairly firm. You have to go way further. Now it's fully sealed. But now to uncap it, like, I don't want to pull too tight and the cap goes flying, but you can't. There we go. You have to pull that hard. What you typically have to do is sort of, wedge it off with your hand. And I mean, it works. I just find it just needs a slight improvement. Either have the bore a little bit deeper for that O-ring so it sits back a little further because you're engaging further up in the pen. So account for that. Have a softer durometer rating O-ring, or just don't introduce the taper until maybe a little bit further. Have a flatter section so that when you engage the pen body into the cap, it's like linear. It doesn't get harder and harder and harder to put the cap on, because you do want it to seat all the way to ensure that it seals. And as a result, if you don't push it all the way in, I do find every now and then when I go to use it, it hard starts for a couple strokes and then it gets going. And that's just because of a little bit of dry out that's happening. If I fully seat it, again, I'm having to push way harder than I think it should. It seals it properly and the hard starting goes away. Since the pen is inked, let's do the writing sample now. Then I will flush it out and we'll have a closer look at the filling system. I will say that writing with the pen is very enjoyable. I like how it feels in the hand. The grip section, you have tons of freedom depending how you hold the pen. It's going to suit everyone. The dimensions, as I pointed out, I think this will fit a lot of hands along with the weight and everything else as well. So I think The overall shape and size is quite smart because it will appeal to many. It does post. It's not the best poster pen. It doesn't go super deep. And it has just a touch of a wiggle to it. It's not going to fall off or anything, but it makes the pen very, very long, too long for what I'd like to do. If you hold the pen way back, you won't have a problem with it. But if you're closer up, it does back weight it a little bit because we do have a good chunk of steel going on at the back here. But I haven't needed to post it. I find it just sits really, really nice. The weight is good, dimensions are good, very comfortable. So that part is quite enjoyable for me. Now, to better show you how the filling system works, I took the liberty of cleaning out the pen. I'm going to demonstrate filling it with water, and then we will fill it with ink and do a weight measurement as well to measure the ink volume. So this is the most interesting part of the entire pen, is this bulk filling system. It's their sort of claim to fame, which is really, really interesting. So as I mentioned earlier, it takes sort of the best of both worlds, the vac filler and the piston filler. Let's show you how that works. So you have a plunger rod, very much like on a vac filler. You unscrew it just like you normally would. You have the seal that's down here to seal off the larger ink reservoir from the lower reservoir. So it seals off there. There's a little O-ring. I'll show this in a moment. I still don't quite know exactly what they're doing there with the feed, but that will be up in a moment. Pull the rod back. As you can see on the rod, there are some threads there. Pull that back into this coupling. Focus. There we are. And you keep turning counterclockwise, just like you're unscrewing. It's going to thread itself into there. You think you're done. You're not done. This is that logo that they have on the top of the cap. So you can see the black bit here. This is steel. It's going to now unlatch. And as it rotates around, this is a neat little detail over here. There's a little wedge, a little ramp on the backside. So this goes around, and actually you saw how it lifted up a little bit. Now what you do, so the piston, the sort of vac filler has now just converted into a piston filler. And the camera does not want to focus, but you drive it down. You pushed all the air out, you put it into your ink, pull it back, you just filled it up. You might want to do it one more time just to get the last little bit of air out, then pull it back. You're going to have a full fill. I'll demonstrate that in a moment. And then you just do the opposite. So instead of counterclockwise, it's now clockwise. That mechanism turns all the way around, relatches, and just as it stops, it forces the rod here to unthread from that piston. And then you shut her down, seal it up, and there you go. You're going to be ready to go. It's super clever. Let me show you this part here. I'm just going to pull out the nib and feed. The housing does unscrew as well, just like on a regular pen. So, and it's a Bach housing. But let me pull out the nib and feed so you can see that little feature. Here's a look at the feed, and it has this metal rod, this spike that's in there. And you can see down in there, it gets inserted deep into the feed. This is normally where that nipple would be that would accept the converter or cartridge on a cartridge filler system. But that's gone, and you have this metal spike. Let me put the macro on. When it's installed to the feed, I don't know if that's glue or if that's like a little bit of a melty mark. It was put in, warm or hot or something like that to make it seat a little bit better. And there's the very end. So it looks like it's possibly hollow, and then a little bit is left over. I'm still a little bit confused on this. I don't know if it's to help better improve ink flow or air ink exchange, but I've never seen that before. And I'm sure there is a very good reason behind it. And if you look on the rod, there is a hole in there. The spike doesn't go inside of it, but it has clearance to do that. So I'm still a little bit confused on that one. I'll fill it in just a moment, but this is also interesting. So what you could do is unscrew the piston, and you do your plunge, you pull it back, and if you quickly unscrew it, it did it that time. Maybe I got to do it slowly. And let me just see here. I'm going to undo it. I've been able to get it. So there we go. The coupling disengages without fully, going back together. And what you can do now is you can unthread the rod and drive it back down. And it's just like normal. So even though this mechanism, they didn't fully, get coupled back together, the system still works just fine. So even if you kind of don't complete the cycle properly and the two parts disengage when they're technically not supposed to, the thing will still operate just fine. So that to me was even clever as well, because you always have to worry about, well, what if things don't go according to plan? And the system itself still works great. Okay, enough talk. Let's show you it in action. You insert, you plunge down, and watch, just pulls it right up. Go one more time. We'll go up again, and that is such a huge fill. You could super fill and just push the plunger down a little bit more, get all that air out, and really max it out. But this also makes it super easy for cleaning. You just do this, pull it back, press it out, pull it back, press it out. So again, this is taking best of both worlds. The nice thing with the vac filler is it's one-hand operation, pulls in a lot of ink all at once, but the challenge is, because it's a vac filler, you have to break the seal so ink goes behind, and it makes it a little more challenging for cleaning. Piston filler is great, like on here, this is a piston, but you have to keep screwing it back and forth. So the ink doesn't go behind the seals, but it's not as fast as a vac filler. So this just does the best of both worlds. It's a piston when you want it to be a piston, but the mechanism is just like a vac filler, which is super cool. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to ink this up. We'll check the weight before and after and find out just how much ink. Oh, forgot to do it. Didn't disengage. Let's pull that back. There. See, it takes a little bit to get used to because you still want to do it like a regular piston filler or vac filler. There we go. Now we're all back in order. See, even if you mess up, it works just fine. For reference, let's weigh the pen beforehand. So just over 30 grams. I'm curious what just the pen body is. The cap is 10. So the pen is just over 20 grams. So I'm going to tear this now. And we're going to fill up the pen. The ink we're using is Platinum's Choukuro. I asked the user, the owner of this pen, if he wants me to return it to him uninked and nicely cleaned. I could do it with my ultrasonic cleaner. Or if he would like me to refill it, perhaps with an ink color he doesn't have. And he definitely wanted to try a new ink. I asked if he had this one. He said no, he's been wanting to try it. So here we go. We're going to pop it in there. I'll depress it once. And sorry, pull it up once. I keep thinking vac filler. We didn't quite get that one. Let me, yeah, I wonder if this one's having trouble in this particular ink bottle. Let's try this again. We're not getting, oh, I see now. It's having a little bit trouble with that ink miser. Let me pour some out. I'm using my own 3D printed version. Let's do this again. So I'll push it out. Oh, that air bubbles. Let's pull back. Try not to spill on camera. It's always terrible doing stuff on camera. Okay, let's measure that now. So now we are up to 2.45. I'll get a little bit more out of it. We got a little bit more, let's call it 2.6 mils. So that's pretty good. There's a teeny little air bubble. I mean, that's not even enough to worry about. Maybe you get another 0.2 mil or something like that. So now you just, we're gonna screw it down, lock it up. There we go. Now I'm still always nervous with this. So I grab a tissue just in case a little air comes out and a little ink gets in the way. Tighten her down. And, oh, let me wipe that off. Yeah, little ink did come out and my hand caught it instead of the tissue or the cloth here. So there we go, fully filled up pen. For those wondering, here is a quick little look of this Platinum Choukuro. If you want to see a little bit more writing with it, my review of the Ensso Puma, the Ebonite one, I filled it with this ink. It is very dark, very black. They say it's the blackest ink there is for fountain pens. It beats all the ones I have and that I have seen, so I concur maybe there's something else. But if you want to look into more information of this, I always recommend the website Mountain of Ink. So thanks one more time to the owner of this lovely Conid Minimalist pen. Very interesting. I love the looks and the styling. I think it's really, really sharp. What is a little too sharp, though, is the edges on this clip. Filling system, though, is super cool. And I am a little bit surprised by the capping. It's just too tight on there. You heard me rant about that, so we'll put a nail on that one. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, I'll try my best to answer them. Check out the Conid site. Check out their YouTube channel as well. But let's chat down there. Hit the thumbs up. Hit subscribe. Got a bunch more stuff coming. Don't want to miss it, so we'll catch you next time.